welcome in for another playoff edition of Armchair Quarterback. I'm David Allen, joined each week by Coach Guy Suttle and Rob Root. Each week we talk about our Cleveland County football teams. We look ahead to what's coming up this coming week, and then we'll talk a little college football, and we'll even throw in some Carolina Panther talk, which I'm excited about the Carolina Panthers after yesterday, and it was a loss. So we'll talk about that, though, later in the program.
You switching teams?
Nope.
Because Cowboys won yesterday.
Cowboys won yesterday, so we'll talk all about that. Hey, this is a special hour-long edition of Armchair Quarterback, so get you a cup of coffee and buckle up, because we're going to be here for a few minutes. So let's start with playoffs. I mean, guys, here we are, second round of the playoffs. Got all four teams in it, three of them on the road, one of them at home. And we knew just from the records, as we talked about last week, that we had some tough hills to climb. And as we go in alphabetical order each week, we start with the Burns Bulldogs having to make the trip over to Monroe. Monroe undefeated on the season, Coach, and kind of with the injuries to Burns late in the year, and then in the first round of the playoffs, just overwhelmed by Monroe Friday night.
Yeah, and you know, going into that game, we thought out of the four games that were going to be played, that Burns had the tallest task, and you know, barring injury, they would have had the tallest task, and with the injuries that they had, that made it almost an insurmountable hill.
Rob, we talked about Monroe. Obviously, we know we've run into them over the years in the playoffs. Our teams have here in Cleveland County. Usually athletic, usually high scoring, and usually very physical. And it sounds like from what we heard, they were all of those things and then some on Friday night.
Yeah, Keegan Chambers, the quarterback from Monroe, accounted for over 200 yards of offense by himself. And you know, we talked about Burns had to stay ahead of the chains if they wanted to have a chance to win the game. 35-7 at halftime. They just dug themselves a hole so quick. But like we said, with those injuries, they just could not get out of the hole to get things going.
Well, and Coach, you mentioned my Cowboys in the NFL yesterday. Something that we've now seen 3 weeks in a row. It was in the Eden-Moorhead game, then it was in the Burns game on Friday night. The Bulldogs coming out down 35-7, tried the onside kick to start the second half, and Monroe ran it back for a touchdown. And just like that, you go from trying to come out and get momentum and get back in the ball game to, oh my gosh, you know, what in the world?
Yeah, and you know, not trying to make any excuses or take anything away from what Monroe did, but you know, what is also so ironic, and it shows why the state changes every 4 years. If you look at Monroe and where they're going to be, the next realignment, they got more students than Kings Mountain right now. Yeah. And here they are playing Burns, who has, you know, 850 students. So there's a lot of athletes to choose from in that situation. Again, not making any excuses, but you know, they're going to be 5 or 6A in the next realignment, and Monroe's got a lot of people to choose from.
Yeah, going from like I said, from 2A to 6A next year. But again, on a positive side for Burns, such a young football team this year.
Very young.
They played so many sophomores. You looked at that middle school team; they had an outstanding middle school team this year. So the future extremely bright. You know, you want to keep playing, but you know, there is a good days ahead for the Bulldogs.
And one thing that's probably going to help them too with realignment for the Bulldogs is we assume that they are going to go into a little more competitive conference, which will help them against these teams in the second and third round. And again, the JVs, having a JV game every Thursday night, assuming that some of these preliminary forecasters are correct on some of these conferences, it's going to be a much better conference for Shelby and Burns.
Well, we beat that horse to death there as far as the conference is concerned, but there you see the final score, 56-14. Monroe over Burns ends the season for the Bulldogs at 8-4. I mean, still a heck of a season for Burns and Coach David Devine, and they will, as you guys both said, young team that will come back and be better for having gotten to play a lot of those young kids this year. So we'll switch gears and go now to Crest. Crest on the road at Oak Grove. And guys, this is one of those, though, that we talked about on last week's show, and we said, you know, Crest, the lower seed, having to travel, their only loss was a close one, and all this, that, and the other. not even a close ball game, Coach.
No, and we kind of figured that one going in, that a little bit of what Oak Grove had played against and saw early in the first round just wasn't going to match up with what Crest was going to bring to the table. And, you can see in the highlights very, very early on, it was a very motivated Crest team. And I'm sure Rob's got the stats for Friday night and will tell you, but, Oak Grove just was not ready for the speed of the game.
Rob, we talked about this game last week, just kind of what to expect. And, I'm in a text group on Friday night, so I get all the updates from the administrators on campus and at the different games and whatnot. And Coach Shields was sending out those text messages rapid fire because Crest got up early in this one, and it just piled on real quick for Oak Grove.
Yeah, you look at some of the numbers from Friday night. Eli Hamrick went for 266 through the air. He had a couple of rushing touchdowns, threw for a touchdown. Aiden Carson only 46 yards rushing, but he had 2 touchdowns in the game. Crest had 4 or 5 guys with about 40 yards each rushing. The big stat for me in this game, Oak Grove coming in this game scoring points in bunches. In the first half, they were held to 36 yards of offense.
Yeah, well, that's because we play defense in Cleveland County, and I
For
always
sure.
go back to that. I think it was 2019, Shelby played Salisbury, and of course I think about Salisbury being in the West, in the Western Finals, and up until the last drive of the fourth quarter, they were in the negative. So, I mean, it's just one of those things. I mean, Cleveland County is all around football coaching. Again, we saw that on Friday night as Crest went up there and did handle business.
Sure, and it's always, like you say, it's always been that way. If you go back and look at the 2014 defense at Crest that beat Havelock. Havelock comes in scoring 40 to 45 points a game. Crest has given up 3. You're going to find out somewhere in the middle. In that football game, Havelock kicked a field goal. That was it.
Yeah. Well,
So defense is going to win championships. Offense wins games.
Well, and there's a highlight for Oak Grove as they scored the 1 touchdown of the game. And, again, a great season for Oak Grove, 10-1 going into this game. They finished the season 10-2, and there you see Coach Lloyd pulling out a little trickeration. Rob, Shelby faked the punt Friday night, and people I was sitting around saying, wait a minute, why are you showing that in the second round when you're up 21-0? What's Coach Lloyd doing the double pass there on in a game and he's up 28-7?
Yeah, once again, you want everything on film you can get on film because now
Makes them work on it.
in practice this week, Hickory has to work on that play. Another play Crest ran that was pretty interesting. They lined up in a 2-back set with McSwain, the other quarterback, as one of the tailbacks. So at that point, you had 3 quarterbacks on the field for Crest that could throw the football. They ran a direct snap to McSwain, and then you had Carson and Hamrick blocking for him. Now that's on film. Crest can do other things out of that. You put a lot of stuff on film now that Hickory has to plan for, just like Community School of Davidson has to be ready now for the chance that Shelby can fake the punt.
Well, Coach, and we talked about the segment of the season where Coach Lloyd was using 2 quarterbacks, and we said, at some point he's got to make a decision. Well, he's made that decision, and Hamrick's the guy. But then, to Rob's point, all of a sudden you got Brock Melton in a split, and you got McSwain comes in, and now defenses are on skates because they don't know who's getting the ball and what they're going to do with it when they do get it.
Well, I mean, and I think it goes back to the games that Turner McSwain started at quarterback. He's an athlete. We know that. He's played well in the quarterback slot and done well in scrambling, running the ball, running the zone read. So why not get him the ball just as they've gotten Brock Melton the ball? So it gives, at this point in time of the season, I mean, you go all the way back to the first week of August to now, and you're 17, 18 weeks into this, you're actually trying to shorten practice a little bit, but you can't because Crest starts running a double pass. Shelby starts doing a fake punt. All because of that adds 2 or 3 minutes to practice. Before you know it, you're not cutting practice. You've actually lengthened it a little bit.
Final score there, Crest handles Oak Grove with no trouble, 35-7 the final. The Chargers now move to the 3rd round, and, we'll talk about that one coming up. But that's a big matchup with Hickory, and we'll talk all about that here in just a little bit. Let's move on to Kings Mountain. The Mountaineers traveling to Robinson again, another undefeated team. honestly, guys, I'll be the one to say it. I thought Kings Mountain had a chance to win this game, win it possibly close, maybe not a blowout of any sort, but I thought the Mountaineers probably had enough to go up there and be competitive with Robinson. And Rob, that did not happen on Friday night. Again, talking about my text thread, that one got up to 27-0 in a real quick hurry.
Yeah, that was 27-0 at halftime, and for me, Kings Mountain could not afford to fall behind like that in the game. And then one of the big stats for me, guys, how about this? Robinson as a team rushed for 325 yards in that game. To do that against that Kings Mountain front, that is very impressive. We've talked about Dudley and West Charlotte and the Hickories. This J.M. Robinson team is for real. If you can run the football like that against the Crest defense, that's against Kings Mountain defense, very impressive.
There was the highlight of the play that we were talking about before we went on the air where possibly the receiver didn't have it long enough to be a reception, but it could have been that they ruled that play a lateral, and that's why it was a free ball. I'm not 100% sure. Obviously wasn't there to see that. But, Coach, this is one where Kings Mountain, again, down 27-0 at halftime. They did score the first 2 touchdowns of the second half to get it to 27-14. So at least there was that thought process maybe on the Kings Mountain sideline that, hey, we got a chance now to get this thing going. And then all of a sudden, Robinson scores a couple of more to go back up by that 27 margin, and that was the end of it.
Yeah, it just watching the highlights, and like I said, a little bit of text thread, a little bit of, you could go back and watch some of the highlights and things on YouTube and things. It is almost like everything started to snowball in the first half for Kings Mountain, and they do come out and show a little spunk in the second half, and then it snowballs again, and that's the one that they could not recover from. Kings Mountain, though, it did surprise me, and I know one of those is going to be a offensive touchdown, and I'm like you, David. He's clearly didn't have possession of the ball long enough to call it a forward pass or incomplete pass or a catch. So it had to be a lateral, or what the officials saw was a backwards pass for them to scoop it up and go score. But 3 touchdowns and a half against that front, that hadn't happened to Kings Mountain since the Crest game. And I know that was the last game of the season just a couple of weeks ago. But still, we also know what adjustments that Kings Mountain made at halftime against Crest and completely shut them down in the second half with their defense. Wow. To see this many points and this kind of yardage and offense against that defense was a little shocking to me.
My understanding was the offensive line really dominated the football game for Robinson, Rob. And so as we've said, over the years and this season as well too, and Coach Shuttle's still saying it about the Panthers, offensive line is the key to everything on offense. If you can protect the quarterback or you can run block, you can pretty much do anything you want to. Yeah. And apparently Robinson's offensive line really was a stout group on Friday night and made. And of course, Kings Mountain was playing down with their Samaj was out with the broken ankle, and that's one of those forces on the defensive line. And you start taking folks out, that makes a difference too.
Yeah, that Robinson offensive line, everything I read was big. They were strong up front, very disciplined, and again, the part of the game that we see here, we talk about numbers and things, and we never really get into what an offensive line can do unless you're seeing a bunch of mistakes.
Right.
But that's the only time those guys are talked about. But if you've got a good offensive line in front of you, just like we saw this Robinson team, and you're right, David, they're going to win a lot of football games because they can run the football. We've talked on this program before, when you get into the playoffs, you have got to be able to run the ball and stop the run. And that's what this Robinson team can do.
Well, if you go back all the way to 94, when Crest and Burns, and I know they had the highlights a couple of weekends ago, all of those teams starting in 94, we'll just go back that far and look at all those teams, whether it's Burns, Crest, Shelby, that have played in the state championships all the way through, whether they won the game or not, just the teams that make it to the state championships, they have great offensive lines. I can remember in 10 and 11 going to Charlotte Catholic, and on paper, and I know the game's not played on paper, they should have drilled us. It was at their place the whole 9 yards. What didn't account for was that offensive line making holes and gaping holes for the speed. Cleveland County's always going to have skill positions on offense and offensively and the entire defense. The skill positions are going to be there in this county. It's whether or not those 5 guys up front on offense can control the other team's up front people. It always comes down to the offensive line.
41-14, the final, and now in Kings Mountain Falls, finishing a great season, 9-3 for the Mounties this year for Coach Straight-Heron, and the Mountaineers have a lot of youngsters as well, starting quarterback, starting running back, starting wide receiver, all coming back next year. So again, we'll see about defensive front and offensive line and all that kind of stuff. But they got.
And that's a share of the Big South title.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Undefeated JV team.
Undefeated JV team.
Absolutely.
That's right.
And of course, we don't cover them, but South Point, the winner of the Big South Conference, knocked out on Friday night by Ashbrook. So we'll see how that turns out as the playoffs continue. Final game of the week, Shelby Golden Lions at home against the Maiden Blue Devils. There must have been talk, Coach Suttle, after we mentioned it on our program, that Maiden might come out and try to do the pile on the 50-yard line again, and it didn't really matter. I mean, it might have got them fired up. I don't know. It certainly would have probably gotten Shelby more fired up. But it didn't happen, and so it's kind of a wah-wah as they just came out on the field and got ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of ironic. We had talked about it on Monday, and by Wednesday or Thursday, it shows up on a Facebook feed where someone, Delano Little and Paul Cameron from Football Friday Night, that clip of them coming out, because you know Tom Brown, the late Tom Brown, was a big Football Friday Night video hog. I mean, he always got on there. But they made sure that they had those highlights there and emphasized, hey, Maiden came out with their own pile. And it did show Antoine Hamilton saying, they're disrespecting us. So, you know, all that video came out, and I'm sure if it didn't end up in the locker room at Shelby High, it probably did. But needless to say, I don't think Shelby ever felt threatened at all in this game. I mean, I know we say it was 28-0. Why didn't they beat them 52-0? I don't know. It was never in jeopardy. It was plays like this from the defense the entire game, and Land Farmer was able to extend plays, and it just made it was just a dominant win at 28-0 for Shelby High School.
I will say that Maiden did have some good drives in the game. They did move the ball at times effectively. Rob, but for the most part, as Coach said, Shelby was in control. But this is a great play, individual effort by Land Farmer. I mean, he's running all over the field and finally cuts it loose and finds Majay Thompson for the long touchdown. And
that's demoralizing for that team. I mean, for Maiden, it's got to be.
But, you know, Rob, if you're standing in the stands looking down on the Shelby sideline, Land Farmer's like the biggest kid out there for Shelby.
Yeah.
And, I mean, and when he's got the ability to get loose from the pressure, he can be dangerous.
And the thing with him, you know, dealing a little bit of an injury situation right now,
True,
too,
absolutely.
and still playing like that. What an efficient night for him, 14 of 15 through the air.
Oh, yeah.
145, I think a QB rating of like 170. You know, you get that kind of performance from your quarterback. And again, the Tate boys combined for over 100 yards rushing. And again, the thing with Shelby too now with these teams they're playing, I think when we get into this, talk about the game coming up, is the speed on defense. And you saw that speed doing what it needed to do.
Oh, my
Oh,
gosh.
yeah, that's me. You saw
I
that.
know.
Listen, at halftime, I about put that thing in the back of the truck. I about
Got a free oil change.
Yeah,
out
I
of
got a
that.
free oil change out of that thing. I'd have had to turn that in on my NIL form or something. Anyway, Shelby, a balanced attack again. Tristan Tate, Jalen Tate, the running game. You mentioned Land and his passing attack. And that's the key to Shelby's run in the playoffs is that running game comes along with the aerial attack.
And we've talked about for the two teams that got knocked out, you hated to see that. But even with the two teams that are still left, we talk about young football teams. Mm-hmm. Cresta at times on this year have lined up with one senior on the field on offense. You look at Shelby with Farmer coming back another year with that group of receivers that were sophomores.
Yep.
I mean, we're talking about some great young talent that is only going to get better for this county.
Absolutely. You see the final there. Shelby runs this one. There it comes. Shelby 28-0 over Maiden. The Golden Lions now advance to play the Community School of Davidson. And And we'll talk about that in our second segment, and we'll do that after we take this 3.5-minute timeout. You're watching Armchair Quarterback.
Cleveland Community College has identified strengthening online learning as the topic for its quality enhancement plan. We're calling it SOUL. SOUL's 5-year implementation plan is focused on continuous improvement of online courses and promoting student success. We're excited for you to take this journey with us.
I am Noel Tillman II, and that is Gregory Tillman.
Can I call you Dipsy?
Yeah, sure. My wife
There's
calls me
Lon
that all
over
the time.
here.
Really enjoyed you in Deadpool 2, and I'm glad that you took the time out of your busy schedule to be seen or unseen. Tim, do you happen to know?
I think he's working on his resume.
He like duct tapes rides together whenever they're starting to fall apart. Super sketchy.
It's like Ghost Town, isn't it?
Yeah. Been to theme parks.
Killing, people dying, children hurt, and you hear them crying. Can you practice what you preach, and would you turn the other cheek?
How you doing today, ma'am?
Father, help us and some guidance from above. These people got me questioning. Where is the love? Where is the love? Where is the love? Where is the love?
Probably not. I have to study for my exams next week, and my dad would kill me.
I can't make it. I've got a big game tomorrow night. I want to make sure I'm in good shape.
No, I'm good. I don't want to get in trouble. My parents would kill me.
Nah, I gotta fill out scholarship applications.
Everyone has at least one good reason to stay away from drugs and alcohol. Find your reason today and get back to enjoying life.
Here in Cleveland County, many children struggle to develop due to the lack of guidance and shortage of positive role models. At the Boys and Girls Club, we make it our team's mission to aid your child in becoming a better student and, more importantly, a better person with a brighter future.
When your child comes to the club, you can be assured they are being guided in a manner that is beneficial to the growth as an adult that is visible in their lives. Please consider giving your child the opportunity to be the absolute best they can possibly be.
Please support your local Boys and Girls Club today.
Welcome back into our extended playoff edition of Armchair Quarterback. I'm David Allen, joined as always by Coach Guy Suttle and Rob Roop. Each week we get to this point in the show and we talk about what's coming up for our team. So we got two teams in the county still left in the playoffs, Crest and Shelby. And let's start with the Chargers. Crest at Hickory, and there you see the records 10-2 at 12-0, and Tim put in the bottom there, and just want to make sure that we make a note of this is a 7 p.m. start. Of course, we're a 7:30 start. You know, Coach and I have talked about we used to be an 8 o'clock start in Cleveland County. Now we're a 7:30 start county, but that game is going to start on Friday night at 7 p.m. at Hickory. So make sure you include that in your Black Friday plans of getting there on time or early or whatever you want to do. But don't go thinking it's a 7:30 start. Crest at Hickory, Rob, and I mean, it's going to be, if Lewis Carpenter was here, he'd say it's going to be a slobber knocker.
You know, it's a matchup that a lot of people wanted to see last year. There's open to see Crest and Hickory play, and they just didn't get to each other. Of course, Dudley knocked Crest out. I think back to '96 when Crest won the 4A state championship, Hickory won the 3A state championship. Like I said, those two teams should have played each other to see who really the best team in the state was. This is going to be a good football game. Crest has got to come out and play their best game so far for it to beat this Hickory team. I mean, they've won 28 straight. They're defending state champs. They're a senior, heavy-laden team when you look at their starters. So Crest has got to come out and do what they do. They cannot let Hickory dictate anything to them.
Coach, we talked about Crest in the sense that they have gotten off to a hot start in a lot of games. They had Shelby 27-0 at halftime. They were up big on Kings Mountain. They have had several games where they have gotten up at halftime and then not played as well in the second half. I think to go along with Rob's point of this has got to be their best game on Friday night, it's got to be a complete game. It's got to be four quarters of football Friday night.
I agree. I mean, I pulled some of the stats off. I mean, as far as rushing yards per game, they're within 5 or 10 yards of each other. Passing yards, again, Hickory's got a big slice there. It's 175 to 243, but watching some of the highlights, some of the things that Hickory does, they really like to nickel and dime the passing game and keep the chains moving that way. You know, we can look at all these stats and look at all the intangibles, things of this nature, but it's not played on paper. It's played on the turf. But there are some interesting facts out there between Crest and Hickory in that they do have a history, in the fact that they were once in a conference with each other. And 03 played Hickory in the regular season, had to play them again in the second or third round of the playoffs when not as many teams went either. And, you know, Crest has always beaten Hickory in the playoffs. I think one of the stats that I saw was that Crest and Hickory had never beaten Crest in the playoffs. Well, there's also one important stat there also in that Crest has never played at Hickory in the playoffs either. So, you know, that could be a home field advantage. I think the two teams are very close to each other, stat-wise, athlete-wise, the whole 9 yards. So it could come down to special teams and penalties or lack of that could determine this game.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed on some of the film I seen, the teams Hickory played, they had a chance to return some kicks. Crest has got a really good return game, and like you said, Coach, when it comes to special teams, so maybe Crest has a chance to take advantage there. You know, we talk about Stober, the quarterback. I think 26 passing touchdowns this year. The running backs rushed for 28 touchdowns this year. The thing that I still, and again, I don't want to take anything away from them because they're the defending champs and they're good. 6 wins over teams with 2 wins or less. And David, I know you got probably some stats there on the numbers as far as competition. That's why I think if Crest drags them into deep water Friday night where they've not been this year, let's see how Hickory responds.
That's a good point. So the conference or their schedule opponents combined records 56 and 73. So a losing record overall, but they opened the season, guys, with High Brighton, Newton Conover, and Cox Mill. Those 3 combined for 6 wins and 24 losses. So
and Newton Conover opted out of the playoffs.
Yeah,
had
absolutely.
a chance to go play Reedsville in the first round and opted not to go.
Now, that being said, they did beat East Lincoln, who Kings Mountain beat in the playoffs, and they beat North Lincoln, who is 11-1. So the only loss came to Hickory, and North Lincoln is still alive in the playoffs. Matter of fact, they play Ashbrook on Friday night, so that'll be interesting to see. But the score in that game, Rob, pretty impressive. Hickory beat North Lincoln 60-25.
Yeah, game, you go back and watch it. Hickory was, well, again, we talk about Crest limited mistakes. That's what Hickory did in that game. North Lincoln, I believe, turned the ball over 5 or 6 times in that game, and Hickory took advantage every time. So you can't give them extra opportunities because if you do, that's how you end up with a 60 on the board.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though. North Lincoln is running, and this is going to bode well for Ashbrook. North Lincoln is running the same offense that Ashbrook runs. They're running the triple option out of the wing set. So good for Ashbrook in that they face the same offense 2 weeks in a row. That is an offense, though, early in the season that does put the ball on the ground a lot. So, I can see them having 5 or 6 turnovers against Hickory early in the season simply because that is an offense that will turn the ball over for you.
just to finish the point on the schedule, West Iredale 2 wins, Fred T. Ford 1 win, St. Stephen's 2 wins. So, Rob, I don't remember if you said 5 or 6, but it ended up being 6 teams with 2 wins or less on that schedule. So, we love to talk about strength of schedule in Cleveland County because we like to whip up on each other, and that bodes well for us in the playoffs. We'll see how it works for Hickory, but there's the bracket. Hickory against Crest, and then on the bottom side, we already talked about it, North Lincoln against Ashburn.
Yeah, you talk about the combined records of your opponents. You look at Crest on the other side, their records combined 81 and 52. So nearly a third, that's a huge swing.
That's a big swing.
Again, Hickory, they've been there. They're the defending champs. You're playing at their place. So you want Crest to come out and they've, again, got to play their best game. If Crest can do it, if they can pull the upset on Hickory, I think there's a good chance they're playing at home next Friday because I think Ashbrook can take care of North Lincoln.
Well, it's interesting because both of these games here are conference opponents.
Yes.
So you could have a conference game with Crest and Ashbrook. You could have a conference game with Hickory and North Lincoln, or you could have any combination thereof. But I think that's going to be interesting to see, and that'll give some bragging rights to whichever conference comes out to the good there. But that's, again, the 3A West, Crest at Hickory, again, a 7 o'clock start time on Friday night. Coach, you had a final thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a good game. I think that, again, it comes down to special teams and lack of penalties. The team that gets penalized the least amount is going to take advantage in this one. As far as the playing surface or anything like that, Hickory has turf now. This is the second game in a row for Crest that's been on turf, so I don't think that's going to be a problem. It's going to come down to, I think, special teams and penalties.
One of my favorite stories in the Crest Hickory series, Roy Kirby tells, of course, Crest was in their conference, and he was talking to Lou Holtz, and he told Lou, he said, Coach, there's a kicker at Hickory you need to offer. And he said, his kid's name's by the name of Ryan Suckup. And Lou told him, he said, Roy, we don't offer kickers. Roy says a couple of weeks later, he got a phone call. His Lou Holtz called him back and said, Roy, I want you to know, we've offered a kicker.
The part that was in that conversation, as that was there, is it was Coach Jeeper that had come by and asked, said, do we have any chance whatsoever with Brandon Spikes? And Roy said, no, he's going to go to Florida. He said, well, what do you need? He said, man, we'd love to have a kicker. And it was so obvious that was back when you had the DVDs and you could just plug them in real quick. And here's a kid from Hickory by the name of Ryan Suckup. Said, we got this as a scouting tape when we traded. Said, this is against St. Stephen's. And St. Stephen's is one of those football stadiums that's really confined. The concession stand is in the end zone. This kid kicks it and hits a guy in the back standing in line at the concession stand. And he picks up the phone and says, Coach, I'm going to drive up to Hickory and talk to this kid. and how many years did he kick in the NFL? 12,
Absolutely.
13 years?
Yeah, had a tremendous career, no question about that. So Friday night, 7 o'clock, Crest at Hickory. Get on up there and support the Chargers. Now in our last game of the week, Community School of Davidson at Shelby. You see there, Community School of Davidson 9-3. We're talking about that combined opponent's record. They've actually got one of 500. It's the best one that we've seen of any of the opponents so far in the playoffs. 68 and 66 for Community School of Davidson, and they played a 12-0 team, Corvian Community College, that Burns scrimmaged way back when at the Cleveland County Jamboree, still in the 1A playoffs. They're 12-0. They lost to them 47-7, so that's not really something to brag about, but at the same time, this is their first year in football, and they are 12-0 in the one. And so I'm thinking, come on, they had to have brought everybody in from somewhere, Rob.
Yeah, but that's, we talk about these new schools that are being built, especially maybe aren't traditional public schools. And like you said, I don't know if they sent a mailer out and said, look, we want to have a power football team or what, but they've come out of nowhere as a squad.
Well, and another team in their conference is Winston-Salem Prep, and I think Winston-Salem Prep's won like 10 state basketball championships in a row. Obviously not very good on football side because Community School of Davidson beat them 51-0. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe this charter business is just, hey, we'll just pick a sport that we want to be good in. I don't know.
Yeah, and with the money that's out there for them now, and you start I don't know. It's crazy, but I don't think that Shelby is going to, I think this is going to be a game of the first 3 or 4 minutes once the kickoff starts. The first 3 or 4 minutes of this game is going to determine how this is going to go real quick. You're going to find out very, very quickly if Davidson is ready for the speed and athletic ability that Shelby's going to show them in the first 3 or 4 minutes of the game.
Well, Rob, you made a good point. Their losses are to Country Day, 14-0, Forest Hills, 36-7, and the Corvian Community, 47-7. All 3 of those teams, at least we know Forest Hills for sure. Don't know that
Country
much about.
Day too.
Don't know that much about Corvian, but we know Country Day. We know Forest Hills has got athletes.
Yeah, that's what when I start breaking down this matchup, that's where it goes for me. I look at how what they've seen on the field athletically, and those 3 games would have been the best they've seen. So that's why I think they struggle with Shelby offensively. Also, the quarterback, I think I had it wrote down. Yeah, he's thrown 13 touchdown passes, but 15 interceptions. So he's got a knack of getting that ball where he doesn't want it to go.
Yeah.
If he does that Friday night, we know Shelby in that secondary, guys pick it off, they can take it back in a hurry.
Oh, yeah, that touchdown total could go up for him, but
Yes.
they'd be pick 6 instead.
Well, and not only defensive backs, but Nick Nars had an interception return for a touchdown the other night in that win over Maiden. And that's an area I think that Shelby has improved over the course of the season. Their linebackers are playing well. And Rob, you know, they're a little undersized in the defensive backfield, so getting pressure on the quarterback with your defensive line and potentially blitzing linebackers, and Shelby was able to do that against Maiden. If they can do that again against Community School Davidson, could be a long night for them, for those guys.
And it goes back to what we talked about with J.M. Robinson and the importance of your offensive line. What kind of line does Community School Davidson roll out Friday night? Is it a line that can dictate up front what they want to do? And if not, Shelby's able to get pressure onto the backfield. You got a quarterback that, again, has thrown those interceptions. Now he's got guys in his face. How accurate can he be with the football?
And before we go throwing anything on Community School of Davidson, their 2 wins in the playoffs are against teams that a lot of folks around here know a lot about, and that was a 42-6 win over Bandy's. And even though they've been down the last couple years,
Right.
And Mount Pleasant 30-7 last week. So those are not the
Those
kind
are
of
teams that have been playing football a long time.
And
That's
it was
exactly
a Mount
right.
Pleasant team that gave J.M. Robinson a good game.
Yeah.
So it could be, like I say, I really do believe the first 3 or 4 minutes of this game is going to really be the tell of the tape. You know, as far as how it's going to match up. It's either going to be, you know, I just think that either Shelby's going to wear them out again, wear them down, just keep the pressure on them constantly, or we're going to have one more football game very quickly.
All right, Tim's got the brackets to throw up there. You see Monroe, and we already talked about Monroe with the big win over Burns. They got West Stokes, an upset winner there, the 11 seed, and then you got the 10 versus 2. So a couple of upsets in both sides of that bracket. Potentially, we're looking at a post-Thanksgiving Shelby-Monroe matchup if those seeds hold. And, of course, that game's a 7:30 start. I think the bracket says 7 p.m. right there. I don't know.
Max Preps gets kind of squirrely on their start times. They had Crest Oak Grove starting at 7 last week, and it was a 7:30 kick.
Okay, 7:30 kick at Shelby. So, again, Black Friday shopping, do all your leftover eating, and then come out and support the Golden Lions at home. There you see it again. Crest at Hickory, Community School Davidson at Shelby. We need big crowds at both of these games. Visitors at Hickory, home team at Shelby, and that will be a good night. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk a little college football. It's rivalry week in college football. A lot of big games on tap, but a lot of shake-up in the top 10 this past weekend. We'll talk all about that, and we'll talk about those Carolina Panthers when we come back. You're watching Armchair Quarterback.
Today I'd like to make everyone aware of the risk of skimmers. First, let me tell you what a skimmer is. A skimmer is a device that is often installed at a gas pump that is used to steal credit card information. When you use your card at the pump, a skimmer is disguised to look like a card reader and collect both card and PIN numbers that can be used to replicate and create counterfeit cards. Now let me tell you some of the best practices to protect yourself from skimmers at the pump. Always ensure that the tamper tape at the pump you're using is intact. Skimmers are installed inside the pump housing, and this tape ensures that the pump has not been opened. Always try to use the pump closest to the entrance to the store. Skimmers are often installed at the pump furthest from the store and the camera systems. Pay inside whenever possible. Cover a pin pad when entering your pin number to protect against pinhole cameras.
For many kids, just showing up to school is a challenge. Staying through graduation is even harder. So at communities and schools, we do just what our name says. Our staff brings a community of resources to meet each student's needs right in their school, doing whatever it takes to keep kids focused, so they see what we see, a bright future. Join in at communitiesinschools.org.
Chef Paul Prudhomme once said, "You don't need a silver fork to eat good food." Well, on Cleveland County Kitchen, we don't have a silver fork, but we sure do serve up lots of good food. Hi, I'm Deborah Blanton. I hope you'll join me for the next Cleveland County Kitchen. Each month, we offer a complete farm-to-table experience. We visit local growers, we learn about nutrition, and wrap things up with wonderful meals prepared by our guest chefs. It's a lot of fun. I hope you'll join me for the next Cleveland County Kitchen.
The only prediction I'd make is I'd be pretty willing to bet I won't be doing it in 20 more years.
My question is, where's our residual checks?
144 have taken Republican ballots, and Wes and two others have taken Libertarian ballots.
Pravda, however, PBS, however.
Wes.
Wes.
Ladies
and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Welcome back in for our special hour-long edition of Armchair Quarterback. I'm David Allen, along with Guy Suttle and Rob Roop. Each week we've gone through our high school football games from this past week, and we again invite you to go out and support Shelby and Crest this weekend. Shelby at home at 7:30, Crest on the road at Hickory at 7 o'clock. So make sure you check those two games out and give the support to our guys. Let's talk a little college football. It was a big weekend in the SEC because a couple of big upsets. First of all, Oklahoma, who really hadn't done a thing all year long, just stuck Alabama on Saturday night, 24-3. I saw that score and just kept thinking, it's like anything else you see and you think, oh yeah, well, Alabama will come back. And kind of like I meant to say, kind of like the East Rutherford-Reidsville game. By the way, shout out to the East Rutherford Cavaliers for going on the road and knocking out the #1 seed Reidsville Rams Friday night. That was a game, it was 20-0, East Rutherford, 21-0, and everybody kept saying, Reidsville will come back, Reidsville will come back. Well, they did. They came back, they took the lead. And then East Rutherford ended up winning, so I digress.
And that actually helped Shelby in that puts them at home throughout the playoffs.
As long as they win.
As long as they win, they're at home. So.
All right, so sorry, I digress back to the high school game, but going back to Alabama and Oklahoma, what the world, Coach?
Well, Alabama just played themselves out of the playoff. Basically, they had a shot. It was a long shot, but them being Alabama, if they take care of business and, they squeak back into the top 12 and for the playoffs, but not now.
Coach, Rob Kalen DeBoer, bless his heart, because the Alabama faithful not going to be real happy.
You know, once again, what is the saying? You don't want to be the guy that follows the guy. You don't want to be the guy that follows the guy that follows the guy. That's kind of the situation here with Alabama. I mean, you talk about a seat that can get hot quick, and right now that seat is hot.
But Gene Stallings, I mean, nobody wanted to follow him either.
Yeah.
And how many coaches did they go through before it settled down? It's just, yeah, you're right. You don't want to be the guy that follows the guy.
Well, right now Alabama's in trouble. I don't know what all has to happen. Obviously, they have to beat Auburn in the Iron Bowl. This is the rivalry week we talked about, and this is a big win or a big game for them coming off this loss, so we'll see. Another big loss in the SEC as far as the playoffs are concerned. Florida upsets Ole Miss. Ole Miss now probably, Coach, has played its way out as well.
I agree. I mean, Lane Kiffin basically in his post-game interview said as much. I mean, he said, a lot of other factors have to happen for us to have a chance.
And it was interesting. I was watching some of the talking heads Saturday morning, and a lot of them were saying, this Ole Miss team's a team that once they get in, they can win a national championship. Then they go out and lay a big giant egg on Saturday.
Well, 2 weeks ago, BYU was undefeated, and Rob, they took it on the chin at Arizona State. That game ended with drama because the kids stormed the field, and then they put a second back on the clock, and they had to clear the field, and it probably took 20 minutes to get all that settled so that they go out there and throw a Hail Mary that was incomplete.
Yeah, got to be a better way to do these things. I don't know. You want the kids to celebrate, but then when you watch it and you watch the excitement on TV, my thought is somebody's going to get hurt.
Yeah.
Is my first thought watching that many folks rushing the field anyway, and guys trying to get where they need to go. It's just, I don't know. There's just got to be a better way to do it.
And we've seen it happen in basketball. Remember last year with Duke?
Yeah.
it happened some in basketball about this rushing the court, rushing the field, same way. And people have to understand that the game ends differently for football, in that you can't just throw it straight up in the air and wait for the time to run out. It has to touch something. And that's how the 1 second ended back up on the clock. It didn't. And they had already rushed the field. And like David said, it took 20 minutes to get the game back going for that one last play. And the Hail Mary actually worked, except he wasn't in the end zone. The kid caught it, but he caught it on the 2-yard line. So.
Well, and of course, storming the field, that's an issue anyway. And of course, I was today years old when I realized that Clemson apparently storms the field after every win. Like, how goofy is that? Well, I mean, come on, Clemson fans. I'll call you out on that one. And speaking of which, they got the Gamecocks on the rivalry week, and South Carolina is
playing well.
Yeah, they're playing well. This could be a bad situation for Clemson this weekend.
And they're going into Clemson, I know that we know how that state works. I mean, there's no middle ground. When you walk in, hey, who do you pull for? It's not Furman, it's not the Citadel, it's not whomever. They either pull for Clemson or they pull for the Gamecocks. They may have graduated from one of those other schools that I named, but they're going to pull one way or the other. And that is I don't want to even call it a trap game. It is a dangerous game for Clemson if they have any chance of possibly making the playoffs.
Hey, listen, I think South Carolina could possibly make the playoffs if they go into Clemson and win that game Saturday.
You're exactly right, dude. They're an interesting team for me, just on the outside, just peeking in right now. They win that game. Some other things happen in front of them. South Carolina's got a shot. Clemson's got to win this game. They need Miami to get beat by Syracuse so they can play the ACC championship game against SMU if they want a shot to get in.
Well, speaking of Miami, Syracuse at the Carrier Dome, Orange Dome, whatever they call it now, that is not an easy place for Miami to go play. Syracuse started the year 5-0. They have struggled since then, but I think that could be an upset city type situation.
Yeah, that's a tough place to go play. How many teams, Clemson included, even the years that they were very good and going to make the last 4 teams in the playoff, they go to Syracuse and either struggle to get out or get upset. So it is a tough place to go in and play.
Rob, I saw somebody had posted, what's more impressive, Duke's 3-loss season or Alabama's 3-loss season. But Duke Wake Forest, it's a big game because, I mean, if Duke wins, they've got a resume they can put out there.
Yeah, I mean, they've actually got a shot to finish as a 10-win team this year if they beat Wake and can win their bowl game. And again, you go back and look at the losses, just like the SMU game, a game they could have won.
Absolutely.
You know, other than the Miami game, they weren't blown out by anybody. So Coach Manny Diaz has got some good things happening at Duke. And the important thing of those victories with the win over State, the win over Carolina, in-state recruiting. And I understand that the game Saturday with Virginia Tech, they had a lot of recruits there and some kids that verbaled right there at the game. So we'll see how it goes.
Well,
Speaking of
in-state recruiting for Duke, though, isn't that New Jersey? I mean, what's the deal with that?
That's right.
They don't recruit North Carolina. Rob, what you talking about?
Well,
is this gonna be Mac Brown's last season?
No, they announced this week that Mac's coming back, and then they go out and get
Leveled.
their butt whipped by Boston College.
And as a Duke fan, that's the best news I could hear is Mac Brown staying at Carolina.
I love Mac. Mac is back. Mac, all that kind of stuff. It's time to go, Mac. Sorry, buddy, but no, that's not. And State goes out and lays an egg too. So they're neither one bowl eligible, I don't think, at this point. So whoever wins that game, we'll get to go to the Mayo Bowl again.
And
we'll see how
you
that
talk
goes.
about in-state recruiting. It is important. But what I would like to see, and we've seen this over the years, some of the best talent in North Carolina does not stay in North Carolina. Right. The Jonathan Bullards, the Brandon Spikes, all of these kids that end up in the SEC. Actually, I've laid an egg myself. Tarboro. The running back. Gurley. He ends up at Georgia. So I mean, some of the best talent in North Carolina. It's difficult when you look at facilities, though. They can compete with anybody in the country. But then, for whatever reason, the best talent in North Carolina leaves North Carolina to go play in the SEC.
Well, we got to make it a priority.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we're doing that well enough. All right, so some other big games. Florida State. Florida State's had a horrible year. Florida's on the rise at the end. I think it's going to continue. That's exactly right. Michigan, Ohio State. Michigan's had a horrible year. Yeah. Ohio State is just looking forward to getting a little revenge on that one. And that was a big loss over the weekend for Indiana. Indiana, I've been on their train all year long. They go to Ohio State, and they laid an egg. Talk about Colorado. They went and got hammered by Kansas. Yeah. That's put them in a bind now for possibly getting in the playoffs. So, again, a lot of still moving parts in this 12-team playoff. And, anyway, it'll be fun. It'll be a good weekend. You're going to have some Thursday games, obviously, with the Lions and the Cowboys and the Green Bay Packers on Thursday night, and then Friday and Saturday are all college football, and then more on Sunday. So it'll be a great weekend for football. We're going to run around here and miss out on talking about the Carolina Panthers. So the Panthers lose to Kansas City yesterday on a late field goal, 30-27. But guys, everything I've seen on Twitter today is Bryce Young looked like an NFL quarterback yesterday. There may be hope for the Carolina Panthers at quarterback.
We'll see. Guys, because it's hard for me to balance out to look so bad, and then all of a sudden we're saying, we'll see. I don't know. I'm still not sold.
Coach, and the offensive line gave him some time, and he dropped a few in the bucket yesterday.
Yeah, he did. And the thing that I wanted to see, and maybe I just missed it, I wanted to see at the end of the game Patrick Mahomes and Bryce Young embrace, because a lot of times there were some comparisons there, and Mahomes is just a lot bigger quarterback, a lot more physical. He's more physical than people give him credit for. Mm-hmm. But at the end of that game, when they tied it up with 1:46 left, I said it's too much time. Mahomes is going to do a Mahomes thing, and he does. He gets it down, and they get inside the 20-yard line. You just knew that the game was over after that. And I know this is almost like a walk-on, off-the-street kicker that Kansas City was having to use because their regular kicker was hurt. But, he comes in, he drills a, 27-yard field goal, no time on the clock. That's what Kansas City does, though.
Well, and that's what they've done all year. Their point differential is the lowest in the good teams in the NFL. It's like 52 points, and the Detroit Lions is like 177. So, and Detroit had a tough game yesterday, but they're beating the brakes off of a lot of people, including my Cowboys, who beat the Commanders yesterday. Had 2 kick returns in the fourth quarter, and I dropped their defense this week because they hadn't scored for me all season, Rob.
Well, I got to say, as an Eagles fan, that one of the few times I was pulling for the Cowboys was yesterday. So a big thank you there to knocking out the Commanders. Stat I found this week, because this one, the NFC North, the first time since in the division, since divisional realignment happened, to have 3 teams with 8 wins through 12 games. NFC North is loaded with those 3 squads at the top. We talked about Detroit, Minnesota, and Green Bay.
That's right.
Yeah, and Chicago's not the wow. Okay, there we go. That I don't know what happened there, but yeah, there it went again. But Chicago's not the worst team ever. They're just not very good. So I'm gonna tell you though, the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm not an Eagles fan, Rob, as you know, but Saquon Barkley ran for 255 last night. I had another 47 receiving, over 300 yards of total offense, a couple of touchdowns, and they blew the Rams out of the building.
It goes back to what we talked about with high school. Right now, the Eagles are winning at the line of scrimmage. Their offensive line's playing well. The defensive line's playing well. Dealing with a big injury, Brandon Graham tore a tricep yesterday. He's out for the season. So interesting there. And the thing that surprised me again, guys, the San Francisco 49ers just cannot get the ship going in the right direction.
They can't.
It'll be interesting to see Daniel Jones, a local guy. He's down out of Rock Hill, playing for the New York Giants. They decided to demote him early in the week. It was their bye week. He goes into the owner's office and says, hey, just release me. And so they released him. A kid just signed a 4-year, $160 million contract a couple years ago. And so he's got his money. It doesn't really matter. It'll be interesting. Brock Purdy is out with San Francisco, so maybe Daniel Jones jumps and goes to San Francisco. He cleared waivers this afternoon. That means he can sign with anybody. He might go and play a couple of games while Purdy's rehabbing the shoulder, and who knows, he might get San Francisco turned it around,
Yeah. And you still wonder, I know you and I just can't fathom that kind of money. Why would you go into the owner's office and say, release me with that type of extension on the table? But a lot of times it's in the long run, it's cheaper for them to do that. But yeah, he could go into San Francisco and fill in a couple of weeks. And, I don't know what your prorated pay would be, but
I don't
take
know,
it.
but I think his contract was guaranteed, so I don't think it mattered that they released him. I think he's still going to get a check every Friday, so I don't know. We'll see. How about the snow game last Thursday night? We're running out of time, but we got a minute and a half left. Let's talk about the snow game. Pittsburgh and Cleveland started out a beautiful night. Next thing you know, there's 6 inches of snow, and it is just pouring snow. And Jameis Winston, one of the great personalities in the NFL, and they beat the Steelers.
Is there anything better than watching a game on TV in the snow?
That's
even going back to the old days of black and white. Any video you see of a football game being played in the snow on television is just a beautiful thing.
Yep.
And not only that, it's in HD now. So it's like every little flake coming down is highlighted. So that's awesome stuff. And again, we mentioned the Chiefs. So the best teams in the AFC are still kind of jockeying. Monday Night Football tonight, we'll have the Baltimore Ravens. And there we go again. We'll get off of that and talk about our guys again. Crested Hickory, 7 o'clock start. Community School of Davidson at Shelby, 7:30 start again. Get your leftovers, get your shopping done, and get out to support your local high school football teams on Friday night. Happy Thanksgiving. That'll do it for this week. We'll see you next week right here on Armchair Quarterback. That's it for this week.